Thank you all for coming. We do have quorum. The agenda was emailed over. And let us begin with a roll call, which will be self-introductions. So don't be shy. Please introduce yourselves.
Ella
Corey
Phillips,
Austin.
Advisory Board.
Colonel David Holmes, Broward County Sheriff's Office.
Elder Guys Faith Community.
Michael Bell, Community-Based Connection.
From Weeks Public Defender's Office.
Corey Austin, Broward County.
Judge Carlos Rabola, Circuit Court Judge. I sit in the Juvenile Delinquency Division.
Valerie Wanza, Broward County Public Schools. Wait. Did you hear me? Valerie Wanza, Broward County Public Schools.
Thank you, Doctor.
Good afternoon, Cassandra Evans, Florida Department of Juvenile Justice.
Johnny Sanders, Office of Prevention Services, Florida Department of Juvenile Justice.
Thank you. All right. Is John James shot today, or did I miss his introduction?
No, I'm sorry. I was reading something. Forgive me. Good afternoon, everyone. John James, the Public Defender's Office, Juvenile Division. Hope everyone is doing well.
Thank you so much. I had questions.
Never.
All righty. Is that everyone thus far? Okay. I want to please be reminded of our norms. Phones on silent or vibrate. Raise your virtual hand if you wish to speak and be recognized. Maximum 3 minutes per person. Respect all others' opinions and viewpoints, and address all others respectful. Let me bring in Gloria's on the other side for some reason. Let me make some co-host here.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Okay. And now you have to introduce yourself, Gloria.
Good afternoon, Gloria Moschella on behalf of the State Attorney's Office.
Thank you. Mr. Watkins.
Good afternoon, David Watkins, Broward County Schools.
Thank you. All right. So we're going to be reminded that our meetings are public. This video will be posted on NAACP Fort Lauderdale Broward's YouTube page. This is a public meeting, and so be reminded that this unedited video will go up for people to review. It serves as our proof and minutes and such, so you will be able to, people will be able to look at it, and folk do. So and we will refer to this when we say that you said this, or we were supposed to do this, or that sort of thing, and it's not done. It's our accountability tool. We want to let me see. Roosevelt Walters has he's ill. He's had a procedure, but he's coming along just fine. So he is excused. Judge Holmes is teaching a new judges school. I think somewhere out in Arizona or something like that. So she said if she got 5 minutes to slip her away, she would. But she too is excused. And with that, we have quorum. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any unreadiness? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Those,
Aye.
thank you. Those against, nay. Ayes have it. Thank you. Dr. Wanza, you and Mr. Watson, when we last spoke, you were going to gather some data. Now, I just listened. I just watched the video, so you all were going to get us some data on school-based arrest. And we were going to also figure out what's going on with our schools, the cameras in the schools. We did not oppose. The only issue that we had with detectors, metal detectors being used in the schools is that we wanted to make sure that it was used equally throughout the district, not just in East schools that are majority black schools. So can you all share any information on school-based arrest since our last meeting?
David, were you able to get?
So this is David Watkins. So I am still working with Ms. Hudge and Mr. Walker to get that information. And hopefully we'll have that information compiled for you ASAP. So they are still working to put that together.
So that brings me to, did we just not remember and I did not send a reminder, or is the district saying that it is this difficult, it takes a month to get the data? So I don't believe that it takes a month to get the data now. It sounds like this goes back to when we were working on this for the Promise program. So what's the story?
So I think in order to give accurate data, I think the challenge is trying to make sure that there is a distinction between the school-based data, school-related, and community non-school related. And there's some discrepancy about what that looks like. So I think, we're trying to ensure that the data that's related to school events is the data that you're getting, and not data that is not necessarily school related.
I think we would, and we've been down this road before. Not with you, but before you, Mr. Watkins. I think you were principal at that point when we started this. If a child or children are being arrested from Broward County schools, we need to know that if they're picking them up at school, which I know used to be a favorite of Fort Lauderdale PD, if they're being picked up from school because of something happened in the community, we'd like to know that as well.
Okay. And so I will say this, President Ellison, so there are a couple of those instances, right? Because the schools have to at least notify my office, police are on campus, this kind of thing. So we do need to get you the accurate count, but there are, I would say in the last month, I've probably seen 2 or 3 of those where it wasn't a school-related incident. There was a warrant for the student's arrest. There was a pickup order. There was something of that nature. So it won't take us until next month to get you the data. So I will sit down with the keepers of it over the next week so that this is delivered in an expedient manner to you.
Okay. Mr. Weeks, does this not sound familiar? It sounds like the non-transparency thing now. I think that would be information that your office would want to know as well. You're muted,
sir.
Yes, Madam Chair. I do recall there was a conversation some time ago about that data. However, I understand the school board is in the process of pulling together, so I'm sure it'll be available at the next meeting, and then we'll be able to dive into it.
I will reach out to the superintendent. She promised me that it would be there would be transparency, and so this is.
And it's for the entire school year, correct, President Ellison?
Please.
Okay. So we'll just say August through March or. Okay.
And if either one of you can update us on the metal detectors in your schools, please.
So they started the pilot. I believe they went out to 3 or 4 high schools. And I can get the exact school. So they did start the pilot, and it actually went relatively well because it was a consistent crew, if you will, conducting it so that it isn't at this school they do this and at this school they do that. It's actually a district-based or team that goes out and they work with the school staff on implementing the wanding. I know that the board is going to revisit, or they just they adopted, because the policy at, I believe it was last week's special school board meeting or the week before last. And there was much discussion around, is this for students only? Are we including employees? How's this going to work? I can tell you one of the big areas that we have asked for consistency in language is if a student says, I'm not participating, what is the response, one, and how is that response consistent across all schools? So that's one of the big questions. Overall, it was a positive experience. It just wasn't, all the schools on the East, and I can get you the exact list of schools that they went to. In fact, I'm going to text the people now, and I can, probably provide an update before this meeting is over. But it was about 4 high schools that they went to. And I don't want to misquote the names of the schools, but what I do know is that it wasn't a volatile or a hostile or any type of issue. The process was ran relatively well at all 4 schools, but I'm going to get you the specific names of the 4 schools.
Okay, and you said you don't know if it was students only, if it was staff as well.
In the iteration that was adopted by the board, I think it was 2 weeks ago, staff were included, but I understand that there may be some conversation about that, and actually the threshold for staff and the difference of threshold between staff and students. So right now, the policy, the language that was adopted did include staff in the random wanding process.
And one other thing before I go to Mr. Weeks. So what does it look like? I go to my school. Is it like you have single point of entry so everyone goes through?
Mm-hmm. So it's not like that. So basically, there's a decision that at 10 o'clock today, we're going to show up at West Broward High School. And we're going to do like they've identified through some computerized process that maybe these 4 or 5 classrooms. So it's not everybody walks through a stationary, metal detector walking in the morning. They actually show up to those 4, to that school with the district staff. They work with administration. The students, the book bags are left in the room. The students go out, they wand the bags to see if there's anything there. And then they work that way. So it's really they come to the school through some randomized computerized process. They identify 3, 4, whatever the number is, classrooms, and conduct it just for those classrooms only. When they went for the pilot, they did not wand staff or staff possessions. It was just students. So no, it's not what, as you said before, going into school, all 2,500 students walk through a stationary or even a mobile type, metal detector. This is wanding. So they wand the possessions, like the book bag, things of that nature.
Thank you, Mr. Weeks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is there any published procedures for training those staff members on actually performing the wanding, and any further follow through based on the alerts from the wanding? And is there any published guidelines or procedure on how this random selection process is going to take place? And is there any documentation as to any deviation from the random selection? For example, the folks roll the die that says these 4 schools we're going to go to, and they may go to a different school outside of that. One of my concerns is that now that you're introducing this new element into the school system, that we should also be monitoring the school-based arrests based on the schools that are being introduced into the wanding. And if we see an uptick in those areas or a downtick in those areas, that may give us some guidance as to how we either need to alter the policy, address the policy, or figure out how to move forward. So I think we should look at the training of the folks that are doing the wanding, and then monitor the data that comes from the wanding, i.e. do they find something or they don't find something, or i.e. do you see an increase in number of arrests or contacts with law enforcement from those schools?
Okay.
That's my suggestion.
So, Madam President, if it's okay, so I've written down a couple of things. One of the things that I would suggest is, if it's okay, Madam President, at our next meeting, either the leader of that division who actually oversees this, if that individual can be invited to this meeting. But I have these 4 questions as like some pre-work, you know what I'm saying? Some things to be prepared to speak. But if there are published guidelines, I'm going to ask for those and see if I can send them to you in the next couple of days.
Thank you.
Is that okay, Madam President?
That's fine. The district has guidelines and policies for everything, so surely they have this. So we would like to see it.
No, but I just want to make sure I have it. It's training, the randomized selection process, any published guidelines on the deviations from the randomized selection process, and then any data that we've gleaned so far. So like of these 4 schools that they've gone to, what was the outcome? Right? Okay. All right.
And let me ask you, Colonel Holmes, you have your people are at the majority of district schools. What role, if any, does your staff, your SRDs play? Do they play into this whole process? Were you all consulted as the best practices, or what happens if you do? Like, how does this work?
I would have to check with the captain of our SRO program, but at this time, I'm not aware of any procedural matters that we would be involved with, unless something rose to the level of someone possessing something illegal or a criminal act. Then I know we would be required to jump in and act on that. As far as protocols and procedures, I'm not aware of anything in writing. I'm not sure if someone from the school board has consulted with our law enforcement deputies or vice versa. I can find out and I'll let you know.
Thank you. Any other questions or concerns? Thank you. Okay, let's move to civil citation and the stop gaps. Colonel, you reported last month that your process has been successful and has been working as far as your having cross-trained staff at the JAC, and so let's just talk about the progress since last month.
Today, myself and Ms. Evans were fortunate enough to attend the Broward County Chiefs Police Association monthly meeting today, where we discussed the importance of the juvenile civil citation program. We were able to speak with State's Attorney Harold Pryor prior to the meeting, and he advised me that I guess our numbers have come back, and the success rate is actually up higher now. So we're getting more cooperation. It's up to 88%, which moves us ahead of the other counties across the state. So that leads me to believe that we're making progress. However, I wanted to make sure that all the chiefs were aware that we still have a ways to go. 88% isn't 100%. And I explained to them how important it was for them as leaders to articulate to their command staff and to their officers the importance to adhering to these civil citation program. And I explained to them what we've had in dealing with our deputies down at the JAC. There's been a few situations where our employees have advised municipal officers that a person qualified, and that officer took it upon themselves not to comply of what we have in place. So I wanted them to be aware, just so they know what's going on within their agencies, so we can improve these numbers, because 88% is good. And I was excited to hear that we're getting better. We get more involvement, but it's a team effort. But I want to be 100%. I told them, I said, I want to shoot for the stars, and we shouldn't accept anything less. And I went into details about how, across the board, crime has skyrocketed, and some people attribute it to the pandemic. Our officers in law enforcement got to understand that, there may be circumstances of why a kid may behave in an unusual manner, considering what they've been through the past couple of years. And I brought that to their attention, but I also explained to them that it's important for them to share with their officers too. It needs to go from the top down to the bottom, so we're all on the same page. And they understood. I was also informed by State's Attorney Pryor that there were several agencies that weren't cooperating with us that are now inquiring and making calls down to the State's Attorney's Office that they want to be on board. So it's been slow, but it's steady progress, and we're gonna hammer it down and keep going, and every opportunity I can get. And my partner, Miss Evans over there, the guru, we made ourselves available to answer any questions, but we're going to continue to push it and make sure that we go 100%. 99 is not good enough. So that's a good thing. But going back, our stopgap measure, based on the information I obtained from our staff, we haven't had any problems on our end. They're in place. And we're hoping that we don't have any problems in the future. But it all takes, these different municipalities, these agencies, these police chiefs, to make sure that they have things in place. They have protocols in place, policy and procedures in place, to make sure that their officers are adhering to, make sure they're following what we have in place.
So your stopgap is working for your interagency pieces there. But is the sheriff's office still on board for establishing, creating a MOU so that when other agencies show up with children that are civil citation eligible, that you would be allowed to place them in civil citation?
Correct, and that's what I stated to them today, to make sure that they understand what we're dealing with now and how we have to make sure that we get everyone on board with the MOUs. To be able to do that, because we have that stopgap measure in place. That's why we have it there. Some of these officers are making decisions that aren't proper, and we have this measure in place to to save these kids from going down that dark hole.
And have you, when we last spoke, you were going to get with Chief Evans on starting on working on this MOU?
Me specifically?
When we last spoke, that you were going to get with Ms. Evans and the state attorney's office on the begin working on the MOU for the other agencies, now that you have you've established a process within Jack for BSO folk, for other children that show up there who are eligible and should be given that
That
opportunity.
was discussed today, and that's why we're starting the process. We're starting to get them to open their eyes and jump on board. But we don't have everyone on board yet, but we're making progress, which is good.
But do you have a document to show them if Fort Lauderdale said I'll sign it tomorrow? Do you have a process and a document for them to run by their legal and to show to them?
I don't have a document in place yet, but I can get with our legal and make sure that it meets the criteria with DJJ.
Okay. Chief Evans, thoughts? I know we've had this conversation before. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Madam Chair, rather, to Colonel Holmes' point, certainly a work in progress. We dug a little deeper I was in a conversation with the state attorney's office to outcomes, and we are certainly, our outcomes sit to the top of the state. So I know there was a report about a year ago that said that we were not there. And so we looked at our outcomes in relationship to the volume of cases being processed. And while we typically look to the south of us to compare ourselves to, we look to other jurisdictions, particularly Circuit 6, which is the Pinellas Pasco area, and our numbers were certainly ahead of theirs. And so certainly making progress, but still work to be done. What we've done, in addition to just pontificating about the problem, is went back and ensured that my team over at the assessment center are best prepared for handling potential civil citation youth and diverting them at the Sallyport area. So met with Colonel Holmes and Captain President at the JAC to speak to logistics. So should a young person show up at the JAC who qualifies, our goal is really to turn them around at the Sallyport area. We walk through what that would look like, and even strengthening the communication between the department, really from the master control area to actually officer before they even enter into the JAC. Also went back to make sure that my team was aware of the guidelines in our circuit specific plan. And so they have assured me, and I know it's posted, so everyone knows a young person who comes in, let's run through all of the criteria to see if he or she is eligible for a civil citation. Because oftentimes we want to believe a child has to have no history. And the statute allows for children with history to still be considered. And so those postings have absolutely taken place. And the last thing we've done to make this even better is we wanted to make sure that the reason that a young person was not given a civil citation was captured with the greatest of integrity. And so we've been asking officers who choose to still arrest a young person who qualifies for civil citation to pin the reason for the issuance of an arrest report in lieu of the civil citation. So the department is not trying to extrapolate that from the arrest report. So we put some additional efforts in place to give officers every opportunity to say, they're asking me a lot of questions. Perhaps I should reconsider, and perhaps give them an opportunity to allow their emotions attached with the arrest to dissipate and perhaps make a different decision. But work still to be done. And I know Gloria and I, we've talked about the MOU and what it looks like, and, kind of doubling back. And I know she may have more to report on that, but it is still a struggle because the logistics of the system, once a young person is in arrest in a police car, they are very difficult to undo because so many people are keeping track of the process at that point. I think I captured it all, Colonel and Ms. Michelle, but please add in, Madam Chair, would like some more info.
Okay. And so I just want to have one question for you, Chief. So let's just use Fort Lauderdale, for example.
Okay.
A kid comes over who is eligible. There is no agreement in place. So, but how then does that kid, how's that case process?
The child is in custody and brought to the assessment center?
He comes, he has not been processed, he or she has not been processed at Fort Lauderdale. They've gone directly from the straight to the jack. So they get to your facility and they are, no history and they qualify. What happens? How is that case handled?
Okay, so the screener in the utopian world, the screener would would identify who the youth is, pull up the kid's record and let the officer know at the onset, hey, this young person qualifies for a civil citation. Simultaneously, they'll be coordinating with the cross-trained deputy who's at the JAC to say, hey, we have a civil citation eligible youth who's being presented for processing. Officer to officer would have a conversation, again, kind of talk through the logistics of it. In the conversation with Colonel Holmes and Captain President, it would really be out of the ears and eyes of the youth, but really an officer to officer conversation. We have the opportunity at that juncture to consult with the state attorney's office, right? Should, there be some concern because they're available 24/7. So that discussion may take place. Hopefully at that point, we can get buy-in and then the officer pretty much will leave and conclude their interaction with a young person ending in a civil citation. Once all those efforts are exhausted and the young person enters into the assessment center and is subsequently accepted for processing, then the process will move as we know it with deeming this to be an arrest, entering into our information system on the delinquency side, and then court docket number assigned, so on and so forth, is what it will look like.
So you're saying between your staff and Colonel Holmes' staff, somebody would call representative from, this is when they're Sally Port, not arrested at that particular time. Somebody calls a representative from the state attorney's office and says, I have a kid who qualifies for a civil citation. The officer is saying they want this kid processed regardless. Is that what
they may. And so before we get to the state attorney, I'm going to allow officer to have the conversation first, right?
Okay.
And so typically what happens when we consult the state attorneys, there are dynamics that are exacerbating the situation. And so the officer then wants to speak with the state attorney, may want to speak with the state attorney. So we certainly avail that opportunity, very similar to what we're doing with 12-year-old kids. And we see this in unique situations, but again, our staff doing the identification, our law enforcement partners doing the collaboration and the conversation, and then the any extenuating circumstances are then presented to the state attorney's office. That would be the ideal.
So, let me ask you, what prevents your staff from calling on all of the cases? It seems from contacting the state attorney's office and say, this is the situation, because the state attorney originally agreed to go with the agreement, talk to these people, ask them to give these children a second chance, and if they did, they were not going to be prosecuting them. But that's not, that stopgap is not there. So and then it gets to Dennis, and then church is out. So what prevents? Is there any reason why your staff could not contact the state attorney's office, whoever representative is, and say this is what we have, and they would then make a decision?
There is no true barrier to that being asked of us, other than the creation of, and I'm going to air quote this, potentially a hostile interaction between the screening staff and the arresting officer. And what has been described to me is that even when asked for additional information, or when we are asking officers to reconsider their decision, it typically deteriorates pretty quickly because the officer's position as the arresting entity presents itself before the logic of giving a young person an opportunity. So it becomes a very tense dialogue between
Is that the norm?
Staff.
Do you think that would be the norm?
It's difficult to norm it because it happens, unfortunately, infrequently, but it is typical, right? I won't say it's normal, but it is a typical response when an officer is questioned about his or her decision to arrest in the moment with a client present, because we're inside of, we're inside of the building, the child is standing there. It
No, this
changes
is
the
before
dynamic.
you get, and this is, you said it earlier, it was going to be not in earshot of the child.
That's officer to officer. Our screening staff will be in the assessment center. We're going to let BSO know they step out into the Sally Port area. So it's not us out in the Sally Port, it's the officer. So the sequence of events, by the time my team is responding to a young person who's made it, say, through, an interaction with BSO, everyone is inside of the building at that juncture.
So in this case, a MOU with that chief of police and that agency would come in handy. It would be a non-issue there.
It would be a non-issue if the MOU when it's operationalized would be shared in ensuring that all the line staff know, because typically leadership knows, and the sergeants and so know, but the road patrol are unfortunately the last to know, and it comes.
That was the purpose of the agreement, to show that their chief's signature. This is what the chief signed on in. Does that not end the conversation?
No.
If somebody saw something with your,
it doesn't change the sentiments of the interaction, that they are being called to task for a decision being made. It is an uncomfortable discussion. And so what would help us is that they would know up front. Will we educate? Of course. Will we do our best to deliver in a very professional manner? Of course. When they see their captain, their chief signature, they may in turn acquiesce and say, I understand. They may want to make an additional phone call for clarification. We've seen it play itself out as we tried this several different ways, but there's no known barrier to the department advising, referencing a document. It could happen. It just creates a unusual situation that screeners in turn endure.
If Victor London gets his the 85th chief of the Fort Lauderdale Police Department in 1 year, gets his chief to sign off and said this under these we have a child who shows up and he or she qualifies, we will issue this child a civil citation. They see the chief's London, if they see your chief's signature saying this is how it's going to be handled, I'm sure you'll do whatever your roll call or however you'll tell people. Is it your belief that your folk will follow their leadership?
I agree with that, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Colonel Holmes.
Yes, Madam Chair. That's one of the reasons why myself and Ms. Evans took the liberty to address that today with the chief. It has to be enforced from the top. Here at BSO, our deputies know they don't have the option to say, well, this is what I want to know. We have it in our policies and procedures and our protocols. So no, we will enforce it. But we have to have buy-in from the other municipalities. And I, during this discussion, I received a text message from our members down at the JAC, advised me that there were 2 particular municipalities that have been resistant to complying what we have in place. But I was happy to see that one of them was one of the agencies that I was informed that has reached out to the state's attorney's office and that wants to jump on board now for various reasons. So that's good. That's good. But that's why we wanted to take the liberty to let the chiefs know today that you have to enforce it with your troops. Because if you don't enforce it with your troops, it's nothing but something on paper, and the kids suffer. So, I tell you here at BSO, we've been enforcing it from top to bottom. And we just got to get all the other agencies on board to do the same thing.
Thank you, Colonel. I know that there are some new chiefs, several. There's at least one that has an interim. So what was passed, I get a fresh start on some of the agencies there. But I take it that Ms. Michela, the state attorney's office is in support of this MOU at the JAC.
In what way are you asking in detail, in what specific area? Because some of what Chief Evans
The
was
civil
saying.
citation of a child from any agency who qualifies for civil citation, and their chief of police has signed off, said that if one of our officers bring these kids there and they qualify, that you show them the chief signing on, and that they will give that child civil citation.
Yeah, we are doing that. I don't think those are the
No,
cases.
you're not doing that. You're doing diversion. That's not the same thing. I was
No,
talking about civil
no.
citation when
Yes.
they're in the Sally Port. Before they come in, there is no case number or any. It's civil citation straight up.
Well, we can't ask an officer to unarrest a youth who's going to.
I wasn't saying you. I was saying that if the chief of police agreed to that, and I know this was under the previous administration, that was there. They were okay with that. They were even helping to draft it. I'm saying, is Harold Pryor against an agreement between these entities?
No. We would support that. Yeah.
Okay, that was my question. Okay, the stopgap at the clerk of the court's office, Ms. Michela, has that been created?
In terms of unarresting or trying to eliminate that court case number that's generated after the arrest, what we've concluded, or unfortunately what we've come to terms with, is that we think that's an impossibility. We're not going to be able to unarrest a youth once that process has taken place, very similar to once that youth is processed at the JAC, crosses the threshold of the Sally Port. Now they are in DJJ custody. If they're in, if they've already been arrested, we're not able to unarrest. We think that would be a very big ask. We did have a very robust conversation, myself, Chief Evans, Miss Yolanda Brown from the clerk's office, another representative of the clerk's office, regarding how we can handle those cases where they're arrested. And the biggest take away from that meeting was that what we need to continue to do is just prevent that arrest from happening. Now, in terms of the agreement that we already have, the administrative order that we already have with the clerk's office, that if misdemeanor offenses come to their attention, they're to send it to our office. That is happening. They have actually captured a couple of cases. I have 2 cases that were captured recently where they send it directly to my office, and we send those to civil citation from here.
But they have a case number already.
But they do have, of course, but they do actually have that case number. The only way that we see fit to get around that case number being generated is to keep, to keep trying to get back to the police agencies and putting that into their play at the, arrest level in the streets kind of a thing, practice. Most of the agencies are actually doing that. I think that's why we see such a high success rate with the civil citation program.
If you're doing it, that's great, but I'm concerned about the children that are being denied that opportunity. So that's wonderful with the 87%, but I'm concerned about the children that are not getting the opportunity. And quite frankly, they look like me, and they're black boys primarily, and my black girls. So there are several agencies that are contributing to that. So something's going on here, and that we need to stop, pretending like it's not when it comes to our children here. But we'll get a chance to look at the numbers, and you'll see exactly what I mean. And so,
well, I think what we're trying, the efforts that we're making in our office, that we have made, and that I think Colonel Holmes and Chief Evans were speaking to, is that we have circled back with those agencies that did not originally sign on, specifically 2 agencies, Coconut Creek and Davie Police Department. Coconut Creek, we had myself, State Attorney Pryor, Deputy Chief Regina Falk. We met with Coconut Creek Chief of Police. We had a really encouraging conversation. We have a scheduled tour of the diversion program with Ms. Tamika Gaynor next week, I believe it is. He wants to actually come to the program itself and meet with the good people that are working on it at the county level. And I think he's prepared. Hopefully, we're hoping. It seems very positive. The outcome will be that he will be the next agency to sign on. We circled back with Davie Police Department. It seems that at the time that we were doing this MOU with the departments, Davie was going through a change in chiefs. And the new chief did not sign on because that had occurred, but prior to him getting there, he actually requested the MOU from our office. We provided it. He was going to take it to his legal and review it, but they are participating in the civil citation program. They just not formally signed on, but he is not opposed to it at all. And I know we have a couple of remaining agencies that we'll need to circle back with, but that to me, and I think to several of our other stakeholders that I've had constant meetings with regard to civil citation, is the way in which to prevent those arrests that then generate that case number. That's the most important way to do it. To try to get the clerk's office to find a way to unarrest an individual, we don't see that as a possibility. I mean, I've discussed it. I don't know how we can get around that. It would be the same as similar to asking DJJ to unprocess them at the Jack facility. It just, it's a documentation of an individual. I don't see a way around that. So we're trying to do it, the boots on the ground. And as Colonel Holmes was saying, top down, and make sure everybody's educated on where youth are eligible, they are entitled to it.
Mr. Weeks, you led that committee. What was the agreement at that time by the state attorney's office as it pertains to the clerk of the courts?
They were going to work with the clerk of the court to find a triggering system that would identify those cases before the clerk gave them a case number, and then review them. And if they made a decision to issue a civil citation, that would happen before. And if they did not make a decision to issue a civil citation, they would kick it to the clerk, and the clerk would then issue the case number. I understand that is a very complicated system to tackle in the clerk's office. I get it. Nonetheless, I got to give a lot of credit to your leadership, Madam Chair, because you stayed on this issue. And by staying on this issue, you kept it moving forward and getting all the little nuances adjusted so that there could be some level of success. My suggestion would be we stay on this issue. If there's a will, there's a way. I understand the clerk's office is very, very complicated. I understand the processes are very, very entrenched because that's the way we've done it for forever and eons. But nonetheless, if we have the will, maybe we can find a way to carve out some type of delay mechanism for certain types of misdemeanors before they file them. And if that means we got to go all the way down into the core of their IT department to put flags or triggers or whatever, we need to at least be able to make that ask of the clerk so they can either say yay, nay, or it's too difficult or what have you, or we can do it, but it'll take this long to get it done. So I think we should continue to try to get that automatic trigger, because whatever we build today has to survive us that's on this call. It has to survive because it's institutionalized in the system. And I support the state, I support DJJ, and I support all the members contacting every one of those chiefs of police and doing the personal touch. That's important. But that may not survive us, because when the next chief of police comes in, got to start that whole round of personal touches again. So my approach is always to bedrock something into the system with either MOUs, processes that are long-standing, the personalities, and they allow this thing to work after we're gone. So I'm supportive of BSO and DJJ and the state attorney's office getting together and creating an MOU for the chiefs of police to handle it at the JAC. But I'm also supportive of getting together with the clerk's office and figuring out if we can create a system stopgap that is automated to allow the state attorney to make some review before it gets a case number. And I know we're not a bunch of tech geeks on this call, but maybe we need to get the tech geeks on the call with the clerk to figure out how to do it, because I believe it can be done. We just have to keep pushing and pushing and pushing to get it done. So I'm not saying anyone's doing anything wrong. I support what everybody's doing, and it's actually leading to some level of success, but we also have to continue to try to get that bedrock into the system.
And it would be nice if there is something that the state attorney's office agreed to do, but then decided they could not or would not. If they would share that, that would be wonderful, so we can all know what's going on. Also, when you all were meeting, did you all meet with the agencies that had internal exclusions in their SOPs that were not in line with your office's civil citation program? That was Coral Springs, Plantation, and Lighthouse Point.
I have not, we have not met with Coral Springs again yet, or those other two agencies. I believe Ms. Gaynor and I are trying to coordinate some dates for Lighthouse Point, and what was the other agency you mentioned?
Springs, Plantation, and Lighthouse Point. Ms. Gaynor, is your schedule looking clear? Because this has been going on for months. They agreed that they would at least review, and I think Springs has new leadership. That might be an opportunity.
Okay, so my schedule is always clear, because if it's not clear, I'll make it clear, because it's that important to me. We have not been able to meet with them again. I did put a call into Coral Springs. Previously, there was someone at the state attorney office coordinating the meetings, but we just haven't been able to get those rescheduled.
Maybe we need to talk to the commissioners, because we're not getting anywhere here with these people. Just, we're just not getting anywhere. We've been literally talking about this for months, and the meetings have not happened. So I know that we know several of the commissioners in those areas, so maybe we can get them to speed this whole process up. Because in the meantime, kids are being denied the opportunity for a civil citation. So thank you for that. What is the date, Ms. Marcella, of your next juvenile expungement workshop?
I do not have a date for that.
Okay. You think it'll be this year, or what are the children supposed to do in the meantime? Is there someone that could help them with the paperwork, or give it to them, or advise them how to do it?
Well, the providers from diversion do manage that. And actually, we are finishing up the new rating for the year. We have a all morning meeting tomorrow regarding the rating for the providers that are already in place. We've been working on that for the last couple of weeks. I will get with Ms. Johnson in my office with a date. I know she was trying to target, I believe, June.
Right.
I thought somebody had provided a date the last time we were at this meeting, but I'll have to follow up with her. But yes, there will be another one before. I think what we're going to do is combine them with the adult workshops, because that's the most manageable and practical way to do it. So I need to find out when we're setting that up again. We did handle juveniles at the last one, youth at the last one.
But I don't know, that I would doubt that everybody knew it, because I knew when we asked you, you said that juveniles were not included. It wasn't on the flyer. And so
right now it's going to be going forward.
All right. You said it was either going to be June or July. And that the next one would actually be for kids, but it was for adults. And so we're asking that your office gives them consideration to working with those juveniles, because the clock is ticking for them. All right. Victor London, is your jail up and running?
Yes, it is. The booking facility is operational. We are in the process of hiring the other full-time staff, but for now, the corporals who will be leading that endeavor are in place and operational.
And your stopgap for civil citation for children that may be brought in that are eligible?
Our brilliant stopgap is to cut it off at the root, which is don't give a booking or arrest number if the juvenile is eligible for the citation. So
but just in case, one of your nice officers shows up at your jails, will there be someone, will the stopgap be put back in place to prevent that, just in case?
Yeah, the stopgap is the officers will have to call and get an arrest number. And in the course of getting that arrest number, they will be screened on whether or not the juvenile is eligible for the juvenile civil citation based on contact with Jack. And if they are, then they will have to give the name of the lieutenant who authorized them to still effect a physical arrest of the juvenile.
Okay. So is it your belief that your new chief, your newest chief, is a supporter of civil citation?
He is. That was one of the first things that he asked me about when we met last week on day number 1. So he's in full support. And he also told me to tell you that I can speak with the full authority of his office.
That's important. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you. All right. So
When am I gonna get to meet him?
That's a good question. What you got? I'm gonna meet him, I guess. When is the last Wednesday, unless y'all cancel the meeting?
No, we will be meeting, the focus group will be meeting on the 27th. And as you know, he was the one that started the focus group. And he was very happy that we were able to keep it going. And I think we'll be coming up on the 1-year anniversary.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Miss Gaynor. Let's see if we can talk missed opportunities.
Okay. So per your request at the last meeting, I had a meeting with Ms. Evans and we discussed, and I created this report as I committed to discuss the data from October 1, 2021 through current, which is February 28. That's the latest data that we have. So this 1-page report was created, and it's a summary of the missed opportunity data that's provided by the Department of Juvenile Justice. If you look at the report, you'll see that there were a total of 84 missed opportunities according to the data. However, one of the things that I did was I separated the offenses that were eligible according to our circuits plan, and then I just identified those that were ineligible. If you look on the left of the report, you'll see the different law enforcement agencies and how many missed opportunities that they had. There were a total of 43 true missed opportunities. So this report shows that there were 4 from BSO, 15 for Coconut Creek, Coral Springs, 13, Davie, Lauderhill, Miramar PD, and Plantation each had 1, and Sunrise Police Department, Pembroke Pines had 2, Fort Lauderdale had 3. So Coconut Creek and Coral Springs had the highest number of missed opportunities. I also went ahead and listed the type of offenses that they arrested for instead of issuing a civil citation. And we were already aware that Coral Springs had a limitation in relation to battery. So you'll see that information there. There were most of the missed opportunities, at least 41 of them were ineligible, with the bulk being domestic violence. There were 38 domestic violence related offenses, and there were 2 misdemeanor weapon or firearm offenses and 1 sexual offense. So that was the 41 that were ineligible. I don't really have any details into those cases because I know there were some discussions about the type of weapons and things like that. For the ones that were eligible, the majority of them, of course, as it has been, were Black. There were 17 Black female, 19 Black male. There were 5 Hispanic male, and then there was 1 white male, 1 white female. The highest age, the age that get the highest number of civil citations, according to the data that we've received, they're 15 years old. So that data is there. And it's just, I tried to make the report as clean and clear as possible. 84% of the missed opportunities are Black. So I think this report encompasses all of the information that that you requested. But if not, I'm more than willing to amend it to include any other information that you request for this report. And then I did not put on there the offenses that we had that were coded as school-based, but 25 of the offenses that we had were not necessarily, it says the way the column is coded is school-related. So we had 25 of those.
Okay. And tell me, like, when it says school-related, what does that really mean?
I wish I can tell you that, but because we do not create or enter this data, I don't have insight as to that. So that would have to be a question for the department.
Chief Evans?
Sure thing. School-related offenses are those that take place on campus, or the offense itself is related back to an incident on campus. So it could be typically you see a theft of, say, a phone. When you get home, you realize your phone is missing. You call the police. They say, when did this happen? I had it at school. I don't have it now. And the officer then relates it to being through their process, says it happened during these hours. It was school-based. And then we capture that information. And that's true of all the school-based offenses in our system. So it could be on campus. It could be during hours, after hours. At the time, it could be after fact. It encompasses quite a few things.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to hear what everybody else has to say, or what their thoughts are on this report as we see it. Mathis, guys, haven't heard from you today. When you look at this report, how does it sit with you?
Well, I'm concerned about the missed opportunities, of course. But I see there are a couple of agencies that we have to target. Like Coconut Creek was 35, Coral Springs 23. We got to find out what's going on in those particular agencies that's generating these missed opportunities. So I'm looking at it from that vantage point.
Thank you. McLean or Bell? Mike?
So I think as other guys have mentioned, there is definitely some missed opportunities, and there is definitely some opportunities there to touch base with some of these local police departments, especially when they have the opportunity to do what's right. They have elected officials who sit on their dais and say they've given people second chances in their community, but this data will prove not to be completely true, or will show some flaws in that perspective. So I am more than happy to reach out to those folks as part of this member of this board and work collectively with them to help push the envelope to make sure we can get some movement going in a positive direction that will further support our kids in our community.
We may need you to lean on the shield over there, Mr. Obell. Figure out how we can get all these kids to be treated the same way. Commissioner Austin, what say you?
You must have saw me unmute, so
I
perfect
did.
timing. Good afternoon, Madam President. Good afternoon, everyone. And I was going to offer something similar. So we have a MPO board meeting tomorrow morning. So I am willing to initiate some of these conversations with a few of these elected officials. Clearly, I know we have some friends in a few of these areas, definitely Coral Springs. So I think we should definitely, push this conversation. So I'm happy to help with that. And I can get with you and others offline in advance of that.
And I want to thank you for allowing us to continue to work with Ms. Gaynor. I think she needs a raise because this aggravating the heck out of her. But she has the department, especially Ms. Gaynor, because she's our contact, has been doing a wonderful job. Commissioner, I wanted to say that and thank her for all the data and the cooperation that she's given. So your monies are very well spent.
I think I heard your comment before, Madam Chair. So as we begin the budget process, wink, wink, I will do all that I can in this area.
Thank you so much. How about Victor London? Captain,
Yes,
what say you?
What was the question again? I apologize.
Looking at this report, any comments?
I will say that I'm checked in via my cell phone. So when you said that statement about giving feedback, I think you can see that I don't have my readers on, so I can't see it.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask that Ms. Gaynor share it out once she can via email.
Okay, I'll share it out. No problem. But you don't get off the hook that easily, though. So now I have to call you after 5. I know how you love that. Dr. Wanza?
So, so obviously the top two agencies don't seem surprising to me, just witnessing, things that we know going on in some of the schools and in some of the communities. And I will say, this is certainly no surprise to anyone on this call that some of our communities have started to shift in what they consider to be where their, quote unquote, normal residents, and their communities don't look the same way that they used to. And what I will say is, just given, we've had a lot of, and I heard the number about 25 that may be school related, but don't know specifically if it's on campus, on campus, off campus. But what I do know is, earlier in the school year, we had a lot of fights and, big brawls, if you will, at Coconut Creek High School. There has been some activity between JP Taravella High School and Coral Springs High School. Both of those are in the city of Coral Springs. So I will work with our department, with the division, Student Support Initiatives of Recovery, to see, what does that look like in terms of those schools. But I am not surprised by the agencies with the highest numbers.
Thank you. Yolanda Brown? Any thoughts?
Good afternoon. I'm a little challenged in seeing the report, but I heard Ms. Gaynor say that there were 43 missed opportunities. Is that correct?
43 eligible. They were eligible. There were 84 total.
84. Yeah, it's very concerning that there are so many missed opportunities. It would be and
Your signal's going on and out.
there. I lost connection, but if they qualify for civil citation, they should have certainly been given an opportunity. So it'd be very interesting to know why there are so many missed opportunities, and it's quite, concerning.
Agreed. Thank you. John James, what say you?
Good afternoon again, everyone. Looking at the report, I think one of the things that jumps out to me more than just the fact that we have the missed opportunities is that if we look at the time frame that we have these missed opportunities, we're only talking about 5 or 6 months here, right? So to have that many in that time frame is alarming. Then to look at the disparity in race and gender is also, well, we're looking at the gender of African Americans is also alarming as well. You have, of 43, 36 of them represent African Americans. Of that, it's about almost in line with male and female. I think that it jumps off at the page as well. So it makes you wonder whether or not they're simply not being given the opportunity simply because they don't, the officer may not like potentially how they are responding to them or speaking to them. And then this is done more so in a punitive manner than what the juvenile justice system is designed for, is to rehabilitate. So to me, this is definitely being used more so as a sword by not giving these kids the opportunity to participate in civil citation is you don't listen, you don't want to do what I say, then I'm going to arrest you. And that's that. And I think that is the thing that jumps off the page to me more than anything. And I mean, because we have our frequent people that don't just comply, which is Coral Springs and Coconut Creek. They lead the numbers. They represent 28 within themselves of the 43. So half of that number is just simply two agencies. So those things are the things that jump off the page to me.
Thank you. Mr. Watkins.
I think for me, what jumps out is when you look at the age at offense. I was very surprised to notice that 14-year-olds are the second highest and 15 has the highest number, which for school, those would typically be somewhere between 8th and 9th grade. So that seems like a high number of middle school kids. And I just think back to the pandemic where these kids hadn't been in person since they were perhaps in the 6th or 7th grade. I thought that was surprising that that number was so high.
Thank you. Ms. Michello.
I think the departments that we're all most concerned about are obviously one of the departments I've already referred to today that we circled back with. I do believe that it would be, I do think it would be helpful and necessary for myself, State Attorney Pryor, and Deputy Chief Regina Falk to circle back with Coral Springs as well. I know from speaking with those two departments when they've either called me from the field, when they're at the JAC or just in some of these meetings, that their concerns were some of the increased number of batteries that we saw, as Dr. Wanza just referred to at the beginning of the school year, although we've been seeing them kind of ongoing throughout the school year. And I think obviously part of it is a result of the pandemic and what has happened with youth and social emotional learning and all of that. But I know that their concern has been the uptick. I think that sometimes when I break down those what's characterized as missed opportunities, when I have an opportunity, as I was doing earlier from the report that we had for this month, some of those cases and sometimes involve more than one perpetrator, youth, juvenile, on a victim. And those are typically cases that law enforcement does not want to give that civil citation opportunity to. But I do think that there is work to be done with those agencies that show the higher numbers. And I think that we can, I think, like I said, with Coconut Creek, I'm very optimistic. I think that we can hope for the same with Coral Springs. And then we may not see such particularly high numbers with those missed opportunities.
Thank you. Ms. Phillips.
Definitely with Coconut Creek and Coral Springs, as I see, there's a lot of the assault and battery charges. I'm not that I'm really curious what it is, but based on the numbers and the disparities, you know, that a lot of things could happen with other minority groups or any of the kids in school. So what targets that, you know, the number is 36. What is that mindset of those officers that we see a lot of the numbers being high in that area? So there's something going on there. It's what I kind of feel and pick up. So I mean, I agree with what everybody says, and I think we need to kind of find out what is the concern, what is driving, especially those assault and battery charges, because those numbers are really high, but it also targets our African-American males. So that's kind of what sticks out to me.
Thank you. Judge Arbola?
It's obviously a report is the reason why we're all here. It's unacceptable. It's not unusual. 85%. indicative of African Americans. That's why we're all here, because that has to change. The judiciary, we're the last line of defense. I will say that my experience in my courtroom alone, and I've been in juvenile delinquency for, I think this is starting my 10th year, that since State Attorney Pryor has come in, I have noticed them to be quicker in making decisions to, for example, dismiss cases as opposed to, throwing it upon us. And Mr. Johns will tell you that I won't hesitate to throw something out where I think it involves departments that are, they're not acting appropriately. But I do want to applaud Mr. Pryor. In the same time, though, I do want to applaud Mr. Weeks for his office doing an excellent job also. But having said that, we still have this issue here that's why we're all here, and that is to address that, to mitigate that, to lessen that, and to continue the struggle.
Thank you. Colonel Holmes?
Yes, Madam Chair. It doesn't surprise me, the high numbers of the two agencies, because it's been that way all along. I know you brought up something earlier in suggesting that we speak with the city officials. I think that says a lot, and it will go a long ways, because the city managers report to the city officials, and the police chiefs report to the city managers. So therefore, if they can get in line with one another, it can make a difference. So, hopefully I'm praying that those couple agencies come around and get on board, because I see the other numbers with the other municipalities are fairly low. I would like to see zeros, from top to bottom. We know we're a long way from that, but we got to continue to improve. I can tell you here, I think about the two agencies with the high numbers. We have one district that's the size of both of those agencies combined. That's unacceptable. So we got to continue to work to correct that issue. And I think you'll see all the other things come into place once we tackle those two important ones, because I see everyone else at least heading in the right direction.
Thank you. Mr. Weeks?
Madam Chair, I appreciate all the comments of all the members previous. I agree with all of them. This is very concerning. One of the things that we were doing internally, and I just want to make this very clear to everyone in the community. Everyone has a role at this table. That's why we're all here. And our roles are sometimes different when it comes to dealing with these issues. From a law enforcement standpoint, I understand that you will oftentimes reach out to your brother and your sister departments and try to guide them into better practices. I understand that Department of Juvenile Justice may also do that, more guiding in the right direction, and the state attorney may also try to get folks to come to the table to see if there's some consensus around how to move forward. We're not always in that particular posture. And I want to make it very clear that what we do is what we do from the PD's office, and not being crossing over on other agencies or this advisory board, but what we do when we learn of these things individually. John James is our chief assistant in charge of juvenile, and he's been monitoring this and through some direction wrote a letter to Coconut Creek to memorialize what we have been witnessing with respect to the missed opportunities. It is important to talk about this, but it's also important to set some benchmarks where we have now memorialized this type of data, and we're asking you to improve. Now, we would hope that folks come along and improve their posture, but now that it's demoralized, it's been placed in the public sphere of discussion, then it becomes another question thereafter. And we will continue to stay on that issue. We will follow up as this time and this data emerges, and we will also reach out to any other departments. And I think we hinted to this earlier in previous meetings that we were going to start to ask departments what's going on. I know that you met with the state. I know that you met with DJJ. I know that you met with PSO. I know you met with everybody trying to bring you along, but the data doesn't lie. You're not getting along. So is there something that's going on other than the data? And we intend to make sure that we stay on this issue. So I appreciate you and the entire advisory board for pushing civil citation. I, like Colonel Holmes, would like to see zeros all the way down that line. And we should stay on every single department until we get zeros all the way down that line. Because I, like you, Madam Chair, it is these children, the ones that are being missed, are the ones that are being hurt. So we need to make sure we focus on these kids, because all the other hundreds of kids that receive the civil citation, they got the benefit of the program. And hopefully recidivism will reduce. But it's these kids that we got to focus on. So continue that work. And we're going to continue to try to be somewhat of a different type of tool to move this conversation along.
Thank you, Mr. Weeks. And then ask yourself, is it only the black kids are fighting? Is this us? We the only one that's fighting? You know, we're the only one that's affected by COVID and don't get the benefit of the doubt, huh? You know, I would think that there's absolutely something there. Perhaps there is a way that we can look at drilling down maybe to specific officers within that department. And speaking of Coconut Creek, I remember when one of their city, when Riddell was on the campaign trail, I mentioned, he said he was the commissioner in charge of the police department. And I asked him, well, why is it that Coconut Creek leads the state in school-based arrests every year? And he said, oh, I had no idea. But I know that DOJ had brought it to the NAACP asking that very same question, and they also went to the district. So I did not believe it, nor do I believe now that they don't know, that they're not aware of it. They're just good with it until somebody does something regarding how children, and particularly children of color, are being treated in Coconut Creek and in Coral Springs. So I think I would think that everybody would be, and hopefully are concerned about the children not being treated fairly, and in particular in these police departments. And think, is it so only the black kids fighting? It's just us, you know, that part. And so I will certainly make sure that we highlight the issue, and among other things, when it comes to our kids and how law enforcement is treating all of the children. Judge Holmes will give the update on the juvenile justice bills when she returns to see which ones were vetoed and which ones were not. And we'll put it in writing. If she gets back sooner and gets it done sooner, we'll send it sooner. Also, let's go down to COVID and Juvenile Detention Center. Chief Evans.
No quarantine at this time, Madam Chair.
Okay. So are the teachers, David's sending his teachers over there, and are they doing remote? Are they doing in-person learning? What are they doing?
Go ahead.
I can't hear you, Mr. Watkins.
You're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. They are in person at the detention center, working in the portables.
Okay, good. Thank you. Still masking or not? Your teachers, I mean.
Teachers mostly are masking.
But it's optional. Don't forget, President Allison, it's optional for employees.
Oh, no, I understand. I was just wondering what was their choice, because I remember listening to the board meeting where their president said all their teachers were masking anyway. So These are just questions. All right. And so your staff has shared no concerns with you as it pertains to the detention center. Is that correct, Mr. Watkins?
Yes. I mean, you know, the concerns that they have, the facility has been addressing them and have been providing access for our district staff to come in and make some necessary repairs and upgrades in the areas in which the teachers work.
Thank you. All right. COVID and your jails, Colonel.
Yes, we currently, right now, we have a total jail population of 3,423, and we have one positive inmate. And they're being isolated at this time. As far as the juvenile, we currently have a total of 10 juveniles. On March 29th, the teacher started back in-person teaching with the juveniles, and we have no juvenile COVID-19 cases. None positive at this point.
Thank you. Chief Evans, do you know the population at the detention center?
Yes, I do. It is, as of 2:40 p.m., it was a total of 45 youth, 42 being male and 3 female.
Is the advisory board meeting for the detention center?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Okay. Well, tell the superintendent I say hey. Okay.
I will pass that along.
Mm-hmm. If you see him, if the people ain't got him.
Okay.
Is testing still available at your jails, Colonel? Or testing or vax?
Yes, ma'am. Yep, both are available.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Is there anything else that we need to add? Any
I have a couple follow-ups, Madam President, if you.
Go right ahead. Now's the time. Thank you, Doc.
Okay. So the 4 schools that they did the the pilot for the wanding was Silver Trail Middle School, Plantation High School, Northeast High School, and Piper High School.
Okay.
Okay, and so I did ask about the, and so one of the things they said that really, like, there was nothing found at Silver Trail. And I think maybe 1 student at each one of the high schools. So I will follow up with that. Obviously, where's Mr. Weeks about the whole data piece? One of the things that I did do, I have, just so you're aware, I did request for an item to be placed on, the superintendent has staff meeting every week, and it's really about the data requests from the advisory board, as well as the items that Mr. Weeks spoke of. So, and what I will put on for the conversation as well is that for the May 11th meeting, with your permission, Madam President, if that's what you would like, to have the the chief of safety, security, whatever, who's over the whole wanding piece, to be available to come to the meeting. So I've asked for to be on the superintendent staff meeting agenda to discuss it so that we understand that this is the request, this is the ask, and these are kind of, I'm going to say, the expectations, if you will, based on previous communications that have been had with Superintendent Cartwright. So I've asked for an agenda item on her agenda. And Mr. Weeks, I have your 4 things that you specifically outlined. What the interim chief did tell me was the data that they really collected that day was really data around their procedural processes of how long is it really taking, are we explaining to children? Do students have questions and are we answering them? How long is the process taking at one school versus another? And it really was about their procedural processes. So, but what I did say is that whether it's him or whoever is, gonna be in that seat on May 11th is our next meeting, right? Mm-hmm. That there would more than likely be an invite for that individual to come and be prepared to speak to the items that I have noted. Is that accurate or?
That sounds good, yes.
Okay. And I also have the piece in about the arrest data.
Okay.
Okay.
And let me ask you, I since y'all are all over the news again today and to now, does that trigger anything as far as, because I think that may have been not the first issue or something at that school. Does that factor into the rotation of the pilot, or does that change anything or anything like that?
So you talking about the school that was most recently on the news?
I'm talking about the one that's on there right now. Yeah.
Right. I don't think so because that school has not been a, school with high reported incidents of that nature. But I will certainly ask the chief.
Okay.
Over safety, security, and emergency preparedness.
Okay, and I'd love to know where they get their best practices from and who consulted. I mean, is it security or some agency? Was it BSO? Was it FBI? Whatever, who it was that they consulted and determined this was the best program, and in what role, if any, that the school resource officer would play as
Okay, I have it
happening, because
all right,
someone could jump off.
So I have
I'll be really interested in about the staff and see how that works, because if you're in my classroom, I want you to check my purse. Is that a problem? These are just questions. I mean, did they ever did they continue to vote down the dogs in the schools? I know that was something that Creek wanted. Was that able to be done, or was it still not? It wasn't a go.
No, I believe the policy was approved on the I think it's ammunition sniffing dogs. I'll get you a policy of what the
gun
policy
sniffing
was.
dog versus the drug
Officer
dog.
Taylor. I just know that it's Officer Taylor. So I will get you the policy on that. I'll try and send that to you, Madam President, before I leave the office today.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Any other follow-up? Any other announcements? We do have go ahead, Mr. Weeks.
Madam Chair, could you also ask whether that dog is cross-certified as gun sniffing, drug sniffing, bomb sniffing, and or any other type of contraband sniffing?
Okay.
I'm very curious because we got a dually trained, I see Colonel Holmes, they got a dually trained dog, bring them in under the auspices of gun sniffing.
Do you all have that, Colonel? Y'all got the dual train, the cross trained dogs over there?
Yeah, we do.
Okay, so do you, I guess we would love to see your SOP, because some people are afraid of dogs and some people just don't like dogs. I mean, I don't care
I'm
for
afraid of dogs. I've always been afraid of dogs. So I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, that's
that could be a problem. So I understand for sure.
Why, Victor Long, you like, please? He's looking like, yeah, okay. All right. Remember that. Okay. Any other unreadiness? Anything else for the good of the order? Hearing none. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.
Thank you.